Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it. Hamas' stated purpose for existing is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people.
They murdered and raped civilians, they executed the elderly at bus stops, and they massacred young people at a festival. They may, it emerged last night, have even beheaded babies.
They found decapitated babies and toddlers.
Israel kills enough of these sons of bitches that this is not a problem against us. Whenever anyone suggests that Israel is willfully killing civilians, that is the most ignorant, bigoted, anti-Semitic bull ever said. There cannot be a ceasefire. Anyone who calls for a ceasefire is a terrorist sympathizer under these circumstances.
I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children. I never thought I'd ever... Anyway,
Do you care about the babies that were beheaded?
No,
the babies
they were never beheaded. That was a made-up story.
How do you
Not
know?
true. It's show me the pictures now.
So what about
Show me the pictures. You're a lying full of You're full of
They bombed hospitals, schools, United Nations facilities, Red Crescent facilities, mosques, churches, civilian homes, evacuee convoys. They're literally bombing everything but Hamas inside of Gaza. And that's because their real effort is to force the Palestinian people out of Gaza and take over that land once and for all. Zelensky is using the Nazi Azov thugs in Ukraine to silence freedom-loving Ukrainians. Joe Biden in the United States, his cronies are prepping the CIA, the FBI, Antifa, the IRS, and now Ministry of Truth to attack freedom-loving Americans.
Demand not one more bullet, not one more tank, not one more piece of artillery, not one more dollar, not one more penny be sent to the Nazis in Ukraine. Demand peace. Thank you all for being here. Continue this energy.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Dive. How's it going? How's it going? Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're having a great day. How we doing, everybody? Let's see. We got the live chat cooking. All right. YouTube. Just kidding. Rumble X, how we doing? Thank you so much for being here. Look, we got a lot of big stuff to talk about on today's stream. Israel has officially admitted that they killed their own civilians on October 7th. Haaretz, however you say that. The Israeli media outlet, who, by the way, breaking news, threatened to sue me. Yeah. Haaretz threatened to sue me, but your boy didn't back down. No. They threatened to sue me. They also have admitted now that Israel did, in fact, kill its own civilians on October 7th. And guess why they threatened to sue me? Because one of their own investigations exposed the fact that Israeli helicopters and tanks were active in firing on positions that included civilians and military personnel, including Hamas and the IDF, on October 7th, which you can then deduct through reasoning and logic that they probably killed civilians of, Israeli citizenship. So they threatened to sue me. I'm going to be showing you the letter in which they threatened to sue me a few weeks ago. And it's just so glorious because now they've come out to admit that we were actually correct in their own reporting. And, the BBC also, when they interviewed me, they asked me about this. They said, Jackson, you've been threatened with lawsuit. We had to cut that part out of the clip I uploaded. But we're going to get into all of it tonight. So thank you all for tuning in. I first want to say, if you'd like to support our program, you can do so in one of two ways. Of course, we've been banned from YouTube, banned from PayPal, banned from Venmo, banned from everywhere. So if you'd like to support us, you can support us by either joining as a member on our X Premium for $3. It's really simple. Just go to the link or go to our bio on X and you'll see that subscribe button right there. Click it. It's $3 a month. You get access to my premium content. Or if you're watching on Rumble, all you have to do is click the join button at the bottom of the screen. That's going to take you to our locals where you can join monthly, annually, any amount of your choosing to support our program. Okay. So, thank you everyone who supports us. As always, it makes all the difference in the world. It allows us to continue doing what we do here, given we've been banned from literally everywhere and they're trying to take our show down, but we're not going to stop fighting, okay? So, let's get into it, okay? Let's start off with this story about the helicopters and what's going on, because let's just say it's a bad week to be a Ukraine propagandist, as per usual, but it's an even worse week to be an Israeli propagandist, okay? Because Israel's had a tough go of things. They said that they found a Hamas tunnel 200 yards away from the Al-Shifa hospital. Turns out it was a elevator shaft. Then they went into the hospital, which they claimed included a calendar with terrorist names on it. Turns out that calendar just had the names of the days of the week written in Arabic on it. No terrorist names present whatsoever, unless the terrorists were named Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then they claimed that they found Hamas weapons and brand spanking new, clean Hamas uniforms inside the Al-Shifa Hospital's MRI center, only to be debunked when Fox News and CNN and the BBC actually went to the scene and noticed that more weapons were hiding behind the MRI machine, meaning that Israel staged the weapons in that very vicinity. How do we know that? Well, I showed you the BBC clip yesterday, and now we have a clip or an article here from CNN. CNN says video suggests the Israeli Defense Forces might have rearranged weaponry at Al-Shifa prior to news crew visits. That's exactly what the BBC said on their coverage just the other day. Well, now we're moving into a whole new and very dark chapter of the exposing of Zionist propaganda. And that includes what actually happened at the start of all of this, recent chapter of madness, okay? And that was the events that unfolded on October 7th. It was widely reported the day of that nearly 2,000 civilians were killed by Hamas terrorists coming in on paragliders. these paragliding Hamas terrorists who were armed with nothing but rifles and homemade RPGs managed to burn and melt hundreds of cars, burn and, melt maybe hundreds of definitely hundreds of bodies to burnt crisps. And again, killed nearly 2,000 civilians. All right. Now, how do I know that? Because I was debating Israeli government spokespeople about this very subject as the events were unfolding. They told me, Jackson, do you really condone the fact that Hamas massacred nearly 2,000 civilians? And I said, well, look, we don't really have all the facts yet. There's been widely reported and circulated videos, for example, of Hamas firing an RPG at a car. And that car was purported to be an Israeli ambulance. Turns out it was an Israeli police force's car. So you get the idea. A lot of propaganda has circulated about October 7th, and everything that happened on October 7th is being used to justify the genocide that is ongoing right now. I wouldn't bore you with these facts and these stories if it wasn't so really important to what's happening today. The slaughtering of over 5,000 children in Gaza, over 12,000 civilians in total now, okay? But the most recent developments are actually quite sinister. We've since learned through Israel's official Twitter accounts, they posted the names of those that were slaughtered on October 7th, that over half of the individuals killed were military personnel. This was even shocking news to the BBC smear artist propagandist that was interviewing me and trying to write a hit piece on me. He said, really? Are you making more stuff up? Half of them were military personnel? Prove it. So I sent him Israel's official government post stating that all the names were listed and over half of them were military personnel. He was shocked. Maybe that's why they didn't run the article. Then we learned through another really crucial piece of evidence. Israel admitted that some 200 of the bodies that they said were Israeli civilians that were killed by Hamas were actually bodies that were Hamas, and they were badly burned, so we didn't know they were Hamas terrorists. Take a listen.
We had the number at 1,400 casualties, and now we've revised that down to 1,200 because we understood that we had overestimated. We made a mistake. There were actually bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists.
So the question then becomes, of course, if they were Hamas terrorist bodies, well, who burned them, right? Who burned those bodies? And is it possible that the same party who burned the bodies of those Hamas terrorists were also the same party who burned the bodies of Israeli civilians? Because there were many who were burned on October 7th. And again, those Hamas terrorists came across the border with nothing but rifles, homemade RPGs that are not capable of burning entire cars, homes, and civilians into crisps, and paragliders. I thought the question was worth asking. Well, we then learned that Israel actually released video footage of what took place on October 7th. That video footage was widely circulated on social media earlier this week, and it showed that Israeli Apache attack helicopters, financed, by the way, by U.S. taxpayers, were indiscriminately firing at anything that moved on the ground around the border of Gaza and Israel, where the breakthrough initially occurred. As you can see in this video, cars, individuals running that don't appear to be terrorists. I mean, these are people wearing what are definitively not the Adidas-clad uniforms or Hamas uniforms that we all know so well. These are people in like white T-shirts and women you can see running about. These are individuals who were targeted in the Apache attack helicopter strikes. At this point, I think it became quite clear to everyone that what happened on October 7th is not what we were led to believe. And that's okay. People get things wrong. But what I have a problem with is when governments and the entire mainstream media apparatus continue to go along with absurd lies and use those lies to justify, again, a genocide in Gaza at this very moment, okay? Now, in a dark and twisted but unexpected turn of events today, we learned something new. Haaretz has come out with a new report which indicates, per an official Israeli statement, that Israeli helicopters were responsible for murdering Israeli civilians at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. Let's take a look. This is from Haaretz. Again, Israeli media, as you can see here, okay? Quote, there is a growing assessment in the security establishment that the terrorists who carried out the massacre on October 7th did not know in advance about the Nova Festival held in the Kibbutz Re'im and decided to come to the place after discovering that a mass event was taking place there. The security systems assessment relies, among other things, on the investigation of the terrorists and the investigation of the incident by the police, from which it appears that the terrorists intended to reach the Kibbutz Re'im and nearby kibbutzim. Now, this is the important part. According to a police source, an investigation into the incident also revealed that an IDF, an Israeli Defense Forces combatant helicopter that arrived at the scene from the Ramat David base fired at the terrorists and apparently also hit some of the revelers who were there. According to the police, 364 people were killed at the festival. So there you have it. You have Israeli media citing a source from within the Israeli police investigatory team that investigated the Al-Aqsa flood and what took place on October 7th, admitting for the first time publicly that it was actually an Apache attack helicopter guided by the Israelis, because, of course, Hamas does not have an air force, let alone an Apache attack helicopter, who was responsible for burning and killing and murdering those civilians on October 7th. Not surprising to those of us that can deduce, what may have been responsible for the burnt cars, burnt homes, and burnt civilians on that fateful day. But I guess surprising for a lot of Zionists who fell hook, line, and sinker for every lie that the Israeli media put out and the Israeli government put out, and that the mainstream media echoed in the UK and in the United States and elsewhere. Now, again, I say this is not surprising because we've actually covered this in extensive detail. If you don't remember, here is a video, we can watch a portion of it, in which the media outlet Propaganda and Co. exposes the fact that it was actually Israeli Apache attack helicopters who were responsible for many of the civilian deaths on October 7th. We'll react to the latter portion of the video, which addresses that fact. If it loads.
In this video.
Here we go. If it loads. Have to refresh.
Direction the terrorists were coming. Rachel described nearly being killed after escaping from the Nova Music Festival when it was attacked by militants. As we reached the roundabout at a kibbutz, we saw Israeli security forces, she recalled. We held our heads down because we automatically knew they'd be suspicious of us in a small beat-up car from the same direction the terrorists were coming. Our forces began shooting at us. Lastly, let's discuss how an IDF commander ordered an airstrike on his own position. The very first target the Palestinian fighters attacked was the Erez checkpoint. The attack was so fierce that the IDF commander, Avi Rosenfeld, in an act of desperation, he called for an airstrike on his own position. The IDF bombed their own base in order to kill the Palestinian militants. So what should we take from all this? Do we absolve Hamas of their actions on October 7th? Of course not. None of this would have happened had they not attacked. Now, whether or not they have the right to resist occupation and apartheid with the use of force is a topic for another video. But the point of this video is to highlight how the IDF's poor response and performance led to the deaths of their own people. As several Israeli hostages have already made clear, the Palestinian militants were kind to them despite the aggression. And as the Nova survivor Yasmin Porat put it, she believes the militants didn't want to kill them. She believes their goal was to take them back to Gaza as hostages. The entire point of the attack seems to be the capturing of Israelis as hostages in order to trade them for thousands of Palestinian political prisoners. And in the chaos that ensued, many people lost their lives. Now, some people say, who cares how it went down? People died. Babies died. Is that not awful? Well, of course it is. But the reason we have to cut through Israeli propaganda is because it's being used to justify acts of genocide in Gaza. Israelis believe deep down to their core that their babies were beheaded and that their women were raped and tortured before being killed. And this simply isn't true. And even with Israeli media reporting the facts, they may never change their minds. But the rest of the world needs to know the truth.
So there you have it. They called an airstrike on their own positions because they were so flooded with these Hamas, attacks that they said, okay, we need to move to desperate measures that ended up getting a lot of civilians very sadly killed. And you can make that argument. You could say, well, look, if Hamas never invaded, then, there never would have been an airstrike, an Apache attack helicopter that would have been called to fire upon the positions and whatnot. I could just as easily make the argument if there was no Israeli occupation, there'd be no armed resistance in the first place. You see how that works? So the last part of the story I want to address here regarding this incredible news that Haaretz is, and credit where credit is due, Haaretz has put out a ton of insane propaganda since this began. But again, let me read that one more time for you. According to a police force, an investigation into the incident also revealed that an IDF combat helicopter that arrived at the scene from the Ramat David base fired at the terrorists and apparently also hit some of the revelers, the civilians who were there. According to police, 364 people were killed at the festival. So credit where credit is due. That is, for an Israeli media outlet, that's better than you're going to get from any Ukrainian media outlet in terms of telling the truth. So credit where credit is due. That is really great reporting. But it, of course, does not come without some interesting, drama as well. Okay, so I will say that, I'm laughing here as this is all going on because despite the fact I will give credit where credit is due, I also must be transparent with all of you. Haaretz, the legal arm of Haaretz, did send me a cease and desist letter regarding a post I made that showed that they actually admitted that tanks and Apache attack helicopters fired upon civilian zones and killed civilians on October 7th. They said, you falsely attributed Haaretz an investigation that you claim exposes all the Israeli lies relating to October 7th. So they sent me this on November 2nd. So, 16 days ago, they sent me the cease and desist letter. And they told me that they, have a right to take legal action. They're going to sue me, blah, blah, blah. They said I had to make this post. They said, Jackson Hinkle, the only way you're going to avoid lawsuit is if you delete the post immediately, which, by the way, they've now since come out and admitted that an Israeli attack helicopter did kill civilians. They said, delete your post immediately that said Haaretz admitted that Apache attack helicopters and tanks fired upon civilian zones from any platform it was published. Immediately publish a retraction stating the following. This is what they told me to say. On October 28th, 2023, I published a post with false and baseless claims about a Haaretz investigation and its reporting on the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. This post included blatant lies about the Hamas attack, which have never been reported by a Haaretz. Those false claims include the deliberate minimization of the number of people Hamas killed, the diversion of blame for the atrocious manner of their deaths from Hamas, the perpetrators, onto Israel, which they have now done, actually, and they've also admitted it wasn't 2,000 civilians that were killed, and a denial of the physical abuses of victims, including mutilation committed by Hamas. I removed the false post from every platform on which I published it. So they sent me this threatening email saying, we're going to sue you, and maybe they still will, which would be really crazy now, considering they've admitted this all in excruciating detail in this story today. But they said, post this retraction, admit you made all this up, even though I didn't, and because you can cite it from their own publishing now, and you could back then too, and I did, and that's how I got it, because they admitted tanks and attack helicopters fired upon civilians, and so they said, you have to post this, and you know what the worst part is? I'm not going to name names, and I get people are scared and people are worried and stuff. I'm not going to name names, but the worst part is there are some very big Twitter journalists, Twitter reporters who actually posted the same thing I posted, got the same email I got, and posted the apology. Okay, they deleted their posts and they posted the apology even though they knew it was true. I said I didn't respond to them, but my whole thing was like, I'm not going to delete it. I'm right. And they've now gone into even more depth to prove that I was right, admitting everything, which is why I feel comfortable sharing this letter they sent me now. Their attorney sent me. And, you know, I'm not going to send them an email saying that I'm going to threaten legal action or anything, but I will send them a kindly worded email requesting that they apologize. It could be in private, but they need to at least privately apologize to me. Public would be preferable, but at least privately apologize for threatening me with lawsuit and saying that I made all this stuff up when they've now gone into further detail confirming the exact story that I published surrounding their reporting about the events on October 7th. I will not be surprised if I do not get a response from Haaretz, but I think it's worth, I think it's worth trying my best and trying to get an apology out of them, which I would share with all of you, of course. So I didn't delete my posts. I'm not issuing an apology. Fuck Haaretz and fuck the Israeli government. The truth is the truth. And the truth of October 7th is, yes, civilians died. Yes, of course, Hamas did kill civilians. Yes, of course, Israel killed many civilians. They burned them to crisps. And they killed many Hamas fighters as well. Now, did Hamas fighters kill civilians that were firing at them? Did they kill civilians that were, caught in crossfire? Did they kill civilians who were unarmed deliberately? Well, the evidence I've seen is that I've seen videos of civilians firing at Hamas. They fired back and they killed them, which is obviously regrettable and it's tragic and it's terrible. But I think that is very different than saying Hamas went around and killed, 1,200 civilians just to and fro for the fun of it, just to be terrorists, because they have no record of ever doing something like that. And until there's any proof that they did that, I'm not going to come out here and say that they did it and moan and groan about how they did that when it's clear that Israel actually killed a lot of the civilians through these terrible means of these, tanks and Apache attack helicopter strikes. So I guess if there's a lesson with this story, stick to your guns. Don't let powerful people try to intimidate you when you know what is right. And that's what we're going to continue fighting to do here, even when they threaten lawsuits against me, okay? I mean, I'm not the Daily Wire, I'm not Ben Shapiro, I'm not Steven Crowder. I can't sue people, and I really don't have the means to defend myself. If I were sued myself, it would be quite the financial blow. But look, I knew we were right, and that's why we stuck to our guns, and we were proven right in today's reporting by Haaretz. And while I definitely, I'm not happy with the fact they sent me this letter threatening lawsuit, I do still give credit where credit is due for reporting the facts of the matter on October 7th, okay? Or at least starting to, okay? They're starting to. So on that note, thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to support the show, as always, I just mentioned it a few minutes ago, but we have our subscribe button on our X profile. You can support my work there. $3 a month. It really goes a long way. If every person watching right now subscribe, I'd never have to worry about it again. And if you're watching on Rumble, you can join our locals by clicking that red join button, and it takes you to our locals page where you can donate monthly or annually or a one-time donation, any amount of your choosing, and however much or little. And, they're trying to take us down. They're trying to sue us now, as you just heard. And your support is really needed now more than ever before, okay? All right, now let's move into our next story here. This is probably not going to be a super long stream, but we do have some stuff to talk about as well. We're going to talk about Elon Musk. We're going to talk about a school that was targeted in an Israeli airstrike today. Okay. So, let me pull this up. Bear with me for a second. Okay. So, some really interesting developments with Elon Musk and the X platform this week. And let's get into it. So, look, if there's anyone who is definitively not an anti-Semite or anti-Semitic, and doesn't have an anti-Semitic bone in his body, I'd have to say it's probably Elon Musk, okay? Now, why do I say that? I say that because I've never seen him say anything anti-Semitic, first of all, and I follow just about everything the guy says when it relates to political issues I follow, and when it comes to Israel, Gaza, when it comes to Ukraine, I follow everything. U.S. politics, I follow it all. So I've never seen him say anything anti-Semitic, okay? But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Maybe I missed something, okay? But all this week, the media has been up in arms, claiming that Elon Musk is anti-Semitic because of a tweet he put out. We're going to look at the tweet. But this has caused some huge ramifications. Advertisers of the X platform, people who buy ads on X, and those ad dollars help X survive as a company, and they go back to creators as well in the terms of ad revenue payouts, which is a new policy that Elon Musk instituted, have been pulling their ad purchases, their ad buys from X over an alleged anti-Semitic post that Elon Musk made. Now, the post in question is this right here. Twitter user by the name of the artist formerly known as Eric, who I have no idea who that is, said, okay, Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of dialectical hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. I'm deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest shit now about Western Jewish populations coming to the disturbing reality, something, 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 okay? And Elon Musk said, you have said the actual truth. Now, make of that what you will. It's clear that there's a lot of vested interests who are pushing a lot of hatred at white people. And it's also true. I mean, I think even Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk have admitted that, I mean, yes, the ADL as an organization has been, supporting of some of that. Doesn't mean it's only Jewish organizations, and it would be incorrect to state that that is true. But it would also be incorrect to state that this statement about certain organizations not being behind some of this hatred that's been pushed over the past 4 or 5 years are not these sorts of groups. They have been, not in entirety, but in some regard. So Elon Musk said, you've said absolute truth. And just with that little tiny tweet, he set off a firestorm in the media. Elon Musk vows thermonuclear lawsuit as major advertisers abandon X and Twitter amid anti-Semitic controversy. Okay? Advertisers, including Apple, IBM, the European Commission, and others, desert X following Musk's agreement with an anti-Semitic post. Look at this. Look at this fraud, Mario Nawfal, calling Elon Musk anti-Semitic. Okay? So I don't know. I don't think that post was anti-Semitic. I really don't. Okay, so hypothetically, if you say that I don't know, give me a group here. If you say that there are Irish-backed organizations that are promoting anti-white hatred in the U.S. by backing BLM or these radical universities or whatever, does that mean that you're anti-Irish, or does that just mean that, there's been a lot of these Irish groups that are not only, but in some cases supporting these anti-white groups? It doesn't mean you're anti-white. Doesn't mean anything like that. It just means that you notice something, and that thing is particularly true. Okay? Just because you state a fact about something doesn't mean that you hate those people. It doesn't mean anything of the sort. It just means, yeah, that's been happening. Okay? Now, what I find so funny and outrageous about this is all of these companies are now using this one post that Elon Musk put forward saying that's absolute truth to justify the canceling of ad buys on Twitter, which obviously hurts Twitter as a company. It hurts the user. It hurts those who get ad revenue from Twitter. It hurts those who want to see Twitter become a true free speech platform, because if Twitter is reliant on advertisers who will bow out the moment something is called anti-Semitic or anti-this, that, or the other, then that means that the platform as a whole is not going to be able to uphold true free speech if it has to answer to that. So, I just think the calls of anti-Semitism are ludicrous, and I think Elon Musk did nothing wrong. I don't think he deleted the posts, and good on him for not deleting the posts. But, what's so crazy about this is TikTok this week, all across the platform, it went viral. Osama bin Laden letters. Yes, the CIA asset, Osama bin Laden, the terrorist. His letters went viral on TikTok, talking about how, wow, these young TikTokers were like, wow, he was saying some things about the Israeli occupation that I've never heard before. They're all reading Osama bin Laden's letters for the first time, and they're like, wow, this guy had some things he said. And while I think a lot of people who saw that information, lots of young Gen Z saw that letter and were like, wow, we were sold the lie that all these countries, all these people hate us for our freedom, our democracy. That actually is not true, There was other people, of course, who were making light of what took place on 9/11, and that, of course, is, I think, absurd. And I think it's also absurd to make any definitive claims as to stating who we know was responsible for the attack in entirety. I think that's also a bit ludicrous as well. I think what we know for certain is that the alleged leader of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, did not have the necessary means and technical infrastructure to carry out an attack like this on his own without any major state backing. I think we'll say that. But getting aside from that conversation, what's more anti-Semitic? Stating that, there's been some Jewish groups behind this radical racial ideology in the U.S., or making the most viral thing on your website Osama bin Laden's letter about Israelis and the Zionists? I mean, I'm just asking the question. Make of both of those situations, events, what you will. You can judge for yourself. I'm just asking, if you are concerned with anti-Semitism and you're concerned about your ad dollars being used to push a more radical line, which one of those is more radical? Elon Musk or the Twitter users posting the Osama bin Laden letter? If I was an ad buyer, I would know for certain which I think is more radical, okay, and which is less, advertiser friendly. If you're concerned about things not being advertiser friendly and, your ad appearing next to a post, what's worse? Your post appearing next to something Elon Musk says about the ADL backing radical liberal racial ideologue groups, or Osama bin Laden's letter? It's really just such a joke. Like, these people are like, oh my gosh. It's like, well, okay, you're still advertising on TikTok, though. I'm not saying I'm not saying pull your ad money anywhere. I'm just saying, if you're going to pick and choose about which one's more, offensive, I think we know which one it is. So anyways, Elon Musk, he got really worried when all these advertisers started pulling out from Twitter. And so he tried to counterbalance. He tried to swing in the opposite direction. He put out this tweet right here. He said, as I said earlier this week, decolonization, this quote right here, saying stuff like that, and similar euphemisms necessarily imply genocide. Clear calls for extreme violence are against our terms of service and will result in suspension. Now, the interesting thing about this euphemism right here is it was actually, this saying was developed and made famous in response to the official stated, policy agenda of Israel's far right-wing radical Likud party, which said that they will have full Israeli security apparatus control from the river to the sea. And that's why Palestinians now have this saying. So their saying is actually in response to the same saying that was created by the Israelis. They just adopted it and turned it on their occupiers. Okay? So Elon Musk is saying decolonization necessarily implies a Jewish genocide, thus it is unacceptable to any reasonable person. Now, I'd never disagree with Elon Musk about something that's a bannable offense while I'm streaming on his own platform. Never. And anyone who does, obviously should 100% be banned because that's how the world works, But I do find it a little bit funny that the guy who grew up in apartheid South Africa is now pointing fingers about what is, what's a euphemism for genocide. I will say that. But, you can read all the responses and stuff like that. I just think it's a little bit funny. He made the statement, at the risk of stating the obvious, anyone advocating for the genocide of any group will be suspended from this platform. Now, of course, I've never advocated for any genocide, anything like that, but I did share a few people who have. For example, Twitter user Yakovov, who tweeted this out. Yakovov said, flatten everything, spare no school, no children's hospital, no old age home, delete their entire gene pool off the face of the earth. I asked Elon, so if you're going to suspend anyone who's advocating for genocide, why was Yakovov not suspended? Or what about Dr. Eli David, the World Economic Forum employee? Dr. Eli David's made many posts that are, I would say, more than euphemisms for genocide, but this one takes the cake. He posted a photo of a Google Maps search that says Gaza and says no results found on Google Maps. Try searching for something else or in a different area. He said, too soon, ? Making fun of the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza at the moment. So I said, what about this guy? And Elon Musk actually responded to this guy. He's like buddy with this guy, okay? And, I just think this is also insane. Words get twisted so much and people make stuff up, and Elon Musk understands this better than anyone. His Wikipedia was changed today. They changed his Wikipedia. It said Elon Musk is a far right-wing conspiracy theorist today. Can you believe that? Elon Musk understands this better than anyone, so why is he going along with it, okay? I mean, the Jerusalem Post this week published an article saying, white supremacist Jackson Hinkle. What? So, Jerusalem Post, they're not in the U.S., so I can't sue them, but I just had the question for them on Twitter. I'm like, why did you smear me as a white supremacist in your propaganda hit job article? Because I've never posted or said anything that is euphemism or otherwise, about white supremacy. It's insane to accuse me of that. And in fact, I think it's even funnier because guess who is defending the EFF in South Africa, Julius Malema, just a few months ago. Julius Malema, the guy who everyone was calling a maniac, anti-whites because they have this historic song they sing in South Africa, about, white South African farmers. And there's this economic dilemma with that story and that song. And it's actually really interesting. And, someone who understands that very well is Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson actually was going to go to South Africa and interview Julius Malema. And while I haven't talked to Tucker about it, talked to a guy on his team about it, and he's like, yeah, we kind of understand it's not what people like Elon Musk are making it out to be with Julius Malema. It's not like he's this genocidal anti-white person. We understand there's more history to it than that, and we have some South African friends, and we understand we want to interview him and talk to him. So I was defending Julius Malema. I was being called anti-white, if you can believe it. Now the Jerusalem Post 2 months later is calling me a white supremacist. It's insane. So Elon Musk has since added one more chip to the equation here, and that is he announced that after Media Matters published a hit piece on X and how they're promoting anti-Semitism or something, Elon Musk has said, the split second court opens on Monday, X Corp, Twitter, will be filing a thermonuclear lawsuit against Media Matters and all those who colluded in this fraudulent attack on our company. Okay, so there you go. Stand with X to protect free speech. Now, yesterday I received a lot of questions on Twitter, on Instagram about Elon Musk and his statements about the euphemisms, as he put it, for genocide. And here's what I got to say. I think Elon Musk is in a difficult situation when it comes to advertisers trying to run a profitable company, right? Obviously, the goal of this company is to uphold free speech. That's why he bought it first and foremost, but also it's a company. He wants to make money. So he's found himself in a little bit of a pickle. And that's, I see where he is. But I can also recognize statements like that that have no backing in reality. For example, I haven't seen anyone banned since he made that post about, writing those things on Twitter. I mean, I've seen many people write those things on Twitter and no one's been banned. So is he just saying that to try and quell, the advertisers and make them feel better? Personally, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But as of right now, that looks like exactly what he did. When it comes to the situation of the Gaza and Ukraine war as a whole, let's just go back a few months, folks. I was suspended from Twitter twice during the Ukraine war for Ukraine misinformation. Countless journalists were suspended for telling the truth about what was happening in Ukraine. It was not what the mainstream media was making it out to be. Yes, there are a lot of Nazis in Ukraine. Yes, Russia is going to win. Everyone knows that since day one, if you have a brain, half-working brain. Yes, Ukraine is using actual human shields. Even liberal organizations like Human Rights or Amnesty International exposed that, okay? They were taking firing positions. The Ukrainian military is taking firing positions. This is documented on video from within apartment buildings, okay? They were taking up, they were doing firing positions and having weapons caches, massive, that they posted on their own telegrams from within Ukrainian schools and hospitals. This is not make-believe. This is not like the Israeli Zionist propaganda. This was real. And we were exposing that and we were banned for it. Okay, so let's just do a thought experiment. If we were banned for telling the truth about that, how many people do you think would have been banned under Twitter 1.0 leadership for telling the truth about what's happened since October 7th? You can condemn Elon, you can disagree with Elon, but what you can't do is say that he has handled this as poorly or worse or anywhere near as bad as Twitter 1.0 leadership would have handled this. Twitter has become... I've even been suspended on Twitter on Twitter 2.0 when he initially took over, right? But Twitter 2.0 has become an infinitely more free platform. Frankly, along with Rumble, Rumble is the freest platform of all, but Twitter is not far behind it. These are the freest platforms on the internet, loads ahead of TikTok, Meta, YouTube. These are just government media outlets, basically, that censor left and right. So you can disagree with Elon, but you cannot say that this is anywhere near as bad as what would have taken place under Twitter 1.0. For that, I think we should give him credit. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you're having a good night. I feel like we're getting into the groove of things with some semi-regular streams again. We'll be having on guests and stuff soon and whatnot, and we'll be getting back into that. On the last story here, I do want to share some developments about what took place over the past 48 hours with the Israeli military, because this is some really, really damning stuff, okay? Now, over the past 48 hours, we've seen intense, horrific war crimes committed by the Israeli military upon Gaza and the West Bank. Now, Twitter's gotten a little bit more clamped down, I guess we'll say, with regards to the sharing of sensitive or, gory content. So, while I personally believe that the world needs to see these atrocities about what's going on, while I personally believe that so much of the world is on the side of Palestine right now because they've seen these atrocities. They see the kids with missing legs. They see the kids with their heads blown up. They see the families destroyed. They see the journalists killed, the doctors killed. the first aid responders, the ambulance blown up, all this stuff. Twitter's gotten a little bit more cautious with what they're allowing. So I have been trying to avoid my channel, my X account getting banned. Haven't been sharing as much about this, the horrific scenes, okay? Even though I think the world does need to see it. So over the past 48 hours, there were some horrific events that took place. And while we're not going to show the most, horrific scenes, I do want to talk about it, okay? First and foremost, in the West Bank, we saw this video right here. There was a call to prayer, nightly call to prayer that was being broadcasted in the West Bank, and an Israeli soldier threw a stun grenade into a mosque as the call to prayer was taking place. Take a look. Now, this is happening as Israeli forces in the West Bank are abducting old women, young boys, firing upon civilians left and right each and every day. You can follow my X, my Telegram, where I share these things. It's horrific. And, as we always say, yes, there's now somewhat of a armed civilian resistance in the West Bank. There is no Hamas contingency. There's no well-armed Hamas contingency in the West Bank, okay? And, I always do think it's so crazy that Zionists will wipe away all their war crimes by saying, well, Hamas is terrorists. They're terrorists. Okay, well, maybe they're terrorists, but deal with it like men. If you really believe they're terrorists, deal with the situation like men. Russia says that Ukraine, their military, is terroristic. Says that it's filled with Nazis and banderites. They're correct. But what did they do? They went into the thick of it, and they fought like men. They didn't indiscriminately bomb civilians, hospitals, schools, UN facilities, ambulances, you name it, homes, refugee camps. They didn't do that. They went in, they put on their boots, they strapped up, and they fought like men. If men want to fight, let them fight. By all means. Personally, I think, these sorts of fights should be free of foreign interference, but the world is how it is, and you can't prevent foreign interference from, anybody. That's just how the world is, okay? And we all know if Israel didn't have the backing of the West, they would cease to exist. Now, what I think is so crazy about this, though, is they say, well, they're terrorists, so of course we have to do this. Well, no, you don't have to indiscriminately bomb everyone. And let's not forget, as Israel today, by the way, commits a massacre in the Jabalia refugee camp, bombing the United Nations school of Al-Faqura, I must remind you all that Hamas, while some, including the Israelis and the U.S. government, consider it to be a terrorist organization, it is a fighting force. It's a country. Palestine is a country that has no army. They have no army. They have Hamas. That's not an army. Hamas doesn't have any heavy weaponry. They have like some homemade RPGs, some homemade artillery, I guess, that's made out of like water pipes. They have rifles that they have also constructed based on the blueprints that were given to them. They have a fighting spirit, that's for sure, but they have no army. Palestine has no navy. Palestine has no special operations forces. Palestine has no air force. They have the paragliders, but that's not an air force. Palestine doesn't have an army. They just don't. So is Israel, one of the most technologically advanced, military and security organizations on the face of the earth. Very well armed, even though they tell you all that they don't have nukes. And yes, I know it's a violation of the Symington Amendment to supply U.S. aid to Israel, given that it does have these nukes. We still do it anyways. They do have these nukes. They'll tell you they don't, but they do. Despite that they have all this stuff, they have the Iron Dome. They have a very relatively large military. It's very well armed, very well equipped, lots of heavy weaponry. They still are bombing schools. So let's take a look. Al Jazeera reports many killed in Israeli attacks on 2 schools in northern Gaza. Hundreds of Palestinians sought shelter at schools. Survivors used shovels and hands to extricate people from the rubble. Israeli raids have killed many Palestinians at the Al-Fakura school run by the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, the UNRWA, in the Jabalia refugee camp, and another school in the Tal al-Zatar, also in northern Gaza. At least 50 people were killed in the attack on the Al-Fakura school, the Palestinian Ministry of Health said on Saturday. It said the 2 attacks killed and injured hundreds of people. Israeli attacks on schools, hospitals, and public facilities seem to be a trend right now, said Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud, reporting from Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. You know what's interesting about Khan Yunis in southern Gaza? Even though Israel said that they're only going to be targeting northern Gaza and their invasion, their operation, we've now learned that Israel is actually starting to target and is planning on moving into southern Gaza. Massive bombing of southern Gaza took place today, and this is what happens. Israel bombs until there's just about nothing left, then they move in with their troops. This was a bombing on southern Gaza today, and a huge plume of dark smoke raises into the air after the bombing took place. I mean, that was a big one right there, okay? We also saw further proof that journalists were again killed today. More journalists were killed today. That makes hundreds of journalists killed since October 7th. All this at a time when U.S. support for Israel is at a record low. 68% of the American public says we should not support Israel and we need a ceasefire. A record low for Israeli supporters in the U.S. With more war crimes committed on a daily basis, such as the ones we just covered, I can fully understand why. And I'm proud. I am proud, to be an American at this moment in history when so many are opposed to the horrific war crimes of the Israeli terrorists. Okay? On that note, folks, I'm out. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all have a blessed day. As always, if you'd like to support my show, you can do so by subscribing to my X Premium using the subscribe button on my profile or joining my locals by clicking the join button under my Rumble stream. Thank you so much, all of you who tuned in. Be sure to clip up this stream, share it on TikTok, share it on Instagram Reels, share it on YouTube, share it everywhere, share it on Twitter, and keep the message going, keep the fight going. We are in the middle of an information war, but we are winning. And I think that's new. We're winning. With Ukraine, it was a long and dangerous uphill battle with the level of censorship we face, but I think we won at the end of the day. We're now seeing Zelensky, he's worried about an internal coup. The U.S. is beginning to round things up, push for peace talks. They're saying that this rope that they've given Ukraine for funding it's coming to its end very soon. So we're winning already on this one, and it's far more horrific than what we've seen in Ukraine. So keep the fight going. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all next time. Peace out. Have a great rest of your night.
Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it. Hamas' stated purpose for existing is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people.
They murdered and raped civilians, they executed the elderly at bus stops, and they massacred young people at a festival. They may, it emerged last night, have even beheaded babies.
They found decapitated babies and toddlers.
Israel kills enough of these sons of bitches that this is not a problem again. Whenever anyone suggests that Israel is willfully killing civilians, that is the most ignorant, bigoted, anti-Semitic bull ever said. There cannot be a ceasefire. Anyone who calls for a ceasefire is a terrorist sympathizer under these circumstances.
I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children. I never thought I'd ever... Anyway,
Do you care about the babies that were beheaded?
No,
The babies.
they were never beheaded. That was a made-up story.
How do you
It's
know?
not true. It's show me the pictures now.
So what about
Show
19?
me the pictures. You're a lying full of. You're full of.
They bombed hospitals, schools, United Nations facilities, Red Crescent facilities, mosques, churches, civilian homes, evacuee convoys. They're literally bombing everything but Hamas inside of Gaza. And that's because their real effort is to force the Palestinian people out of Gaza and take over that land once and for all. Zelensky is using the Nazi Azov thugs in Ukraine to silence freedom-loving Ukrainians. Joe Biden in the United States, his cronies are prepping the CIA, the FBI, Antifa, the IRS, and now Ministry of Truth to attack freedom-loving Americans.
Demand not one more bullet, not one more tank, not one more piece of artillery, not one more dollar, not one more penny be sent to the Nazis in Ukraine. Demand peace. Thank you all for being here. Continue this energy.